Welcome back to another episode of Homesteading with the Lawsons. I'm Keith, and my wife Michelle and I have a small homestead in southeast Missouri. We can't provide all of our food from our small homestead, but we try. We raise ducks, fish, garden, and do other things. Well, here's our episode today. We hope you like it. Well, we just got done with the morning chores, and we're headed back to the house to get a cup of coffee and maybe some breakfast. My wife asked me this morning, "What do you want for breakfast?" And I said, "How about some keto sausage and biscuit with gravy?" The recipe is at the end.
Got all my ingredients laid out here, so if you'll come around, I'll show you what we've got. We have here 1 1/4 cups almond flour, 1/3 cup of coconut flour, 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk powder. We have in here a tablespoon of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon baking soda. We have 6 tablespoons of frozen grated butter in the freezer that I'll get out in just a moment. We keep that frozen until the very last second so that it doesn't start melting on you too early and change the texture of the biscuits. We have a 1/2 cup of sour cream, a 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream, 2 tablespoons of melted butter. So I'm going to get this all put together. We start off by whisking all of our dry ingredients together. Almond flour, coconut flour, psyllium husk, our salt, and baking powder. So it's all mixed together and even, distributed evenly. Now I'm going to add the butter. I'm going to add that directly into the mix.
That's frozen, salted butter, right?
Yep, it was grated while it was frozen. Otherwise you can't grate butter very well. Okay, so I'm going to mix that up in there. Now we're going to start adding our wet ingredients. We're going to start by adding our cream, our 1/2 cup of cream, and I'm just going to pour that in. Mix that all up. Now I'm going to add our sour cream to this mixture. And as you can see, it's already getting a little doughy. So I'm going to add our sour cream.
So you're getting gloves on so you can use your hands, right?
Yeah, I like to. Once it gets stiff like this, it's hard to stir. So I'm just going to stick my hands in there and I'm going to start kneading it together. Now, I should have said earlier, I'm going to preheat my oven to 400. It's a pretty hot oven, but they're only going to stay in there for about 10 minutes. Okay, so now that I've got this dough all put together, is I'm going to knead it a little bit. Again, just to make sure everything is incorporated properly. What I'm going to do now is spread this out in kind of a rectangle, and we want it about 1 inch thick. Okay, so I'm going to put it as a rectangle. My gloves are getting a little spread out there. Okay, so we've got that smooshed out. Now we're going to take the dough and we're going to fold it in half. And we're going to do it again. We're going to do this 4 times. Okay. I lost count of how many we did, but I think that's going to be about it. I'm just going to finish shaping this into a rectangle.
a little thicker than an inch, but
I don't think so. I think that's about an inch.
okay. Well, I'm blind, you know. Oh,
Shall we get the tape measure out and measure?
no.
I didn't think so. Okay. Now, since this is our last shaping, I want it to be as close to a rectangle as possible, because then I'm just going to cut it in 6 pieces and put it in the oven.
In a pan. There's the pan got to be greased.
The pan should be greased, or you can use parchment paper. Okay, so cut that down in half, and I'm going to do one. I think I'm going to do 8 biscuits here.
Good for me. They won't go to waste.
There we go. So we have our biscuits. We've got the little layers in there. And we're going to place them on parchment paper and stick them in the oven for 10 minutes in a nice preheated 400-degree oven. And you'll see them when they come out.
Okay, putting the biscuits in.
Okay, so now that I put the biscuits in the oven, I'm going to start on the gravy. And the gravy starts with 2 tablespoons of butter. And I'm just going to melt that. And to that melted butter, I am going to add 1 pound of just breakfast pork sausage.
Mild breakfast pork sausage.
I prefer mild. My husband prefers mild. We're using mild.
I can have it any way. I can have it mild or wild. Well, we're stirring up the sausage to get it to brown.
Should just take a couple of minutes. We want to make sure that there's no pink left is all. Ready?
Is it looking right?
It's just about ready for the next step anyway. Now the next step is I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of chopped onion. And I'm going to let that cook for about 2 or 3 minutes until those onions are getting a little translucent. Okay, so the sausage is nice and brown. The onions are getting real tender. Oh, if you'll remember, I mentioned this is a keto dish. So instead of flour is our base for our 1/2 teaspoon of xanthan gum, and that's just a sweet thickener that we use. I'm going to just sprinkle it on the meat. It actually mixes in better this way and doesn't get all clumpy. So we just sprinkle that on the meat, mix it up. Now, to this, I'm going to add my cream. I've got 1 cup of cream here. And I'm just going to slowly add this in. Okay, so we're going to let this thicken up for just a minute. And the biscuits are ready, according to my timer.
What they look like.
And they did puff up just a little bit, so those look good. Now, we're not going to mess with these right away. We're going to let them cool. The longer you let them cool, the firmer they get. You don't want them to be falling apart completely when you go to eat them. Now, as you can see, that xanthan gum did its job, and it's nice and thickened with just that cream. So to this, I'm going to slowly add 1 cup of chicken broth. Okay. Going to get that all mixed in, and that xanthan gum will continue to keep that thickening as we go. So we're not going to probably need any salt in here, but what does biscuits and gravy need?
Pepper.
Gravy, yes. So what we're going to do is, I like lots of gravy in my, or lots of pepper in my
You like
gravy.
lots of gravy and pepper, don't you?
So I'm just going to generously sprinkle that over my gravy.
We don't know how much, though, do we?
No, I'd say probably a good teaspoon, but I'd start you off with a half a teaspoon. You can always add more if you need to. It's hard to take it away. And as you can see, that's still thickening. And we're going to let it thicken up, and then we'll see in a minute when we put our biscuits and gravy together.
What these biscuits look like, the bottoms and the tops. And we got some eggs to go along with it, some scrambled duck eggs.
House just this morning. Great way to top off a biscuits and gravy meal. Okay. Now I'm going to put on here biscuit. Like I said, the longer you let these set, the firmer they get. This one's a little bit crumbly, but it's still going to be oh so good. Okay. And then we have biscuits and gravy with scrambled eggs, keto style. What does it taste like?
Oh, it's wonderful.
The biscuits are still warm, so they're flaky. The gravy has just got the right amount of salt. Even though we didn't add any to it, the ingredients added enough salt to it. And that pairing with the eggs just makes a perfect breakfast. Yum.
Well, that's it for this episode. Well, this recipe was a great keto recipe, and it can be served any time of the day, not just for breakfast. If you liked this episode, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to share it with others on social media as well. Thanks again, and as always, God bless.